After looking over the blue sheets, I went to someone's test and I picked out some of the wrong answers and kind of summarized it here, thinking of what can I do right after a test to help you do better when you retest on this. And one of the kinds of things that I noted was that students had trouble with this. Here it was two terms, 4s minus 9x. And they're asking, what were the terms? Remember, terms are separated by either a negative sign or a positive sign. So this is a term, and this is a term. Now, what is a coefficient of a term? Well, for this term, the coefficient is 4, and the variable is s. Now, for this term, the coefficient, and a lot of you just put the 9 down, but the coefficient for this term is actually a negative 9, and that's where you lost points. And then the variable is x. Now, another kind of thing that we had here was when it was something like this, 2x squared minus 4x to the 5th plus 7, let's say. And let's get rid of this here now. So we're just doing another example. And they wanted you to put this in descending order. What would be the leading coefficient here? Well, the leading coefficient is determined by whatever the highest power of the variable is. So in a sense, this should be written negative 4x to the 5th plus 2x squared plus 7. So that was the tricky part. So now, what is your leading coefficient? Well, the leading coefficient is negative 4. And again, the term would be this, and there would be 3 terms here. Okay, and that's what they were asking, and sometimes, you know, they asked for the variable first, and then the coefficient. So you had to read this carefully, but as you did your certify, of course, this is where you develop your expertise. Now, here the student had this one incorrect. It was a series of terms. Well, how many terms are there? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But they wanted you to combine like terms. So I had suggested in the lectures to put them in like term columns. So here's negative 3b squared, and there is a negative 5b squared. So these were like terms. And then we had a negative 2a, and then here is just a positive 1a. Now the 1 is not written usually, but for calculations, I suggest you put it there. And then we had a negative 4 and a negative 3. So now we're going to add up these like term columns. So this becomes a negative 8b squared. Nothing happens to the exponents here. The variable part stays the same. When we're combining like terms, only the coefficients are dealt with. And here this is going to be a negative 1a. We don't write the 1. If you write the 1, they're going to take off for that. And then this is a negative 7. And notice we have it written there as well. The order is not particularly significant, but this person didn't have anything right in their answer. All right. So take a moment to write this up, and I'll make it big here for you. 4W minus 12 equals 6W minus 8. Now, you want to try to have your W's positive. So one of the techniques, we can subtract 4W here and subtract 4W there. So this then leaves us with a negative 12 on this side, 2W minus 8. Now the other method is to transpose the negative 8 or add 8 here. This will give you a negative 4 then, and this is 2W. Now, what I'm modeling here is what you should have on the blue paper so I could follow the work. So now, when you go to solve for a positive W, you're going to divide by the numerical coefficient of W, which is 2, and then you get W equals negative 2. Now, notice they had W equals 2. And I didn't give partial credit. Why not? Because they didn't show the work. In order to get partial credit, you need to show the work so I can see, well, oh, here they messed up. They had all of this right. So I'm giving you partial credit for this. Or if you had a negative 2 on your blue sheet and you didn't put in the negative 2 when you entered it into the computer. So there again is the answer, and this is the supportive work we're looking for. So this was one that many students had incorrect. And they're riding back home, and they had this many minutes as the number of minutes to get back home. And they want to have an average, a goal of 51 minutes for her rides. So over here, there's the 51 that she wants to have as an average. But what does she need on that 7th ride? Well, where this might look like an equation, it's not, because we have to find out what this average is over here, and we find out what this average is by adding the total of all of them and then dividing by the total number, the mean. This was the mean that we're looking for, which is the average, and that was 7 then. But then if we, so this is now this side, this is the average, and then this is the average we're looking for. But to solve this, we have a fraction, so we have to get rid of that fraction. And this division bar, fraction bar, makes this like one term. So I have to multiply this side by 7. And then I have to multiply this by 7. So now on this side, the 7's cancel out. I add this up, and this adds up to 306 plus x equals, and this adds up to 357. So now I subtract 306 from both sides, or transpose, works the same, and I now get x equals 51. So this student had the correct answer and they got full credit. But as I looked on those that had it incorrect, I was hoping to see this equation. This is what you needed to put something like this on your blue sheet. And I saw some of you using arithmetic and, getting the sum and fiddling, and then would not get the correct value for x. Sometimes you were close, 53. And again, if I saw this and you had 53, I could give you lots of partial credit because this is the way to solve it. You might have made an error in the computation. This was another one that I saw many students had an error on. In some cases, I was able to give partial credit, but let's take a look at it. So here we see a student, or someone, gets a program where they're charged $7 as a base charge, and they're allowed to send with that $7 450 text messages. Now, their bill at the end of the month was this. So we're wondering how many additional text messages did they send, and then what was their total, because they're asking here for the total number of text messages. So the strategy would be to subtract $7 from 34.20. When I do that, I get 27.20, subtracting $7 from this. Now I have to pay 20 cents for each additional message. Well, this is the amount that I'm paying for the additional text messages. So I divide both sides by 20.20, and I get x now is equal to 136. Okay. Now a lot of you put 136 here, and I gave partial credit for that. But remember, this is the tricky part. You had to add the 450 that you get with this program here for the $7. And this adds up now to 586, which is what this person had correct, and they got full credit. Now, you'll notice on your test that it wasn't 20 cents, it might have been 15 cents or 5 cents, but that basic strategy for solving it is here. What you pay, subtract that from the total, and keep in mind it was for this many messages, and then you say 20 cents for what's left, and you just divide both sides by 20. Now, I don't know if I'm going to have it here, but one of the questions that a lot of people had incorrect is you're renting a car, and it costs $45 a day for the car, and then 20 cents per mile, and this is what people have put. Now, of course, that's wrong, because if this is $45, this is not 20 cents. This is $20. Ah, how do I make that 20 cents? I had to put a decimal there. Oh, so again, if you wrote this, I gave you partial credit. But to get it full credit, you had to be careful of that. And that's part of what the thinking is that we're doing to get these correct. And again, if you did this in practice and certify, then you're in good shape. Now, I remember going over this one in class. One of the parts of this is to pick out the formula for perimeter. And that was perimeter equals 2 lengths plus 2 widths. And they're saying that there's the length, there's the width, and without substituting these in the formula, they wanted you to solve for W. Okay? Well, here they gave us actually the perimeter. They didn't give us the width, and they gave us the length, I should say. So, when you solve, you had to select this formula. That was one of the choices, and the only one that had L's and W's in it was this one. So how do I solve now for the W? Well, I did this one in class. You just transpose the 2L to this side, and then now you divide by 2. And that's what they were looking for. And a lot of people were already substituting here. And it says, without substitution, solve the chosen for the unknown variable, which was a W. Now, most people got the other part right because they put, the value here. This was W, we didn't know. And the perimeter was 51. And the length was 12, so 2 times 12 was 24. And this was all divided by 2. So you added this up, and this was 51, that looks like 75, divided by 2. So the width was, let's see, 3, and then that was 7.5, I guess. Let me check my math here. And that was correct. Okay, and then I had this one for another class, and a lot of them needed some work on this, so I've added it to yours as well. And let's just do this one. We'll write it 1/3 equals a negative 1/2 x minus 2/5. So this was an equation in which we had to get rid of the fractions, and our lowest common denominator is what here? Well, if we just multiply all our denominators together, we get 6 times 5 is 30, and that happens to be the lowest one. So we're going to multiply each term by 30. So 3 goes into there once, 3 goes into there 10 times, 2 goes into there once, 2 goes into there 15 times, 5 goes into there once, 5 goes into there 6 times. So now all our denominators are 1, and we just expand this. So 10 times 1 is 10. This is going to be a negative 15x, and this is going to be a negative 12. Now we want to try to keep our variables positive, so I'm just going to transpose the 15 to this side where it becomes positive. I'm going to transpose the 10 to this side where it becomes negative. So negative 12, negative 10 is a negative 22. And then I divide by the numerical coefficient. And there is my answer. X is this. Okay? Now, this one is for the next one down below. But I think this is run long enough. We're going to wind this up and then do kind of a review of Chapter 3 before we take our quiz today. All right.